Hello, everyone. I'm John Evans, and welcome to another episode of One on One. Todd Lewis has walked some of the most famous golf courses in the world, and he's covered the best players in the world now for a decade, working on the Golf Channel. But long before he landed that high-profile job, Todd's first full-time job as a TV sports reporter and anchor came right here in Wilmington, North Carolina, at WECT. I've known Todd since those early days about 25 years ago, and we reconnected last year when he came to town to cover the Wells Fargo Championship at Eagle Point. So I started our Skype interview for this week's podcast by asking Todd what he remembers and what he learned working as a young reporter right here inside this building.
I guess more than anything, you learned the process of what it takes to put a sportscast together, and then after being repetitive, trying to get better, but along the way, you make mistakes at that young age, and the thing is to not make them frequently. I think more than anything, I learned that I didn't know what to expect because, again, it was my first job in television, but I learned that the viewer is by far the most important person I'm working for, more than working for WECT. I'm working for that person who's watching, who wants to be informed, and in my case with sports, not only informed, but entertained. And it's a responsibility of mine to give that person, that viewer, that information. So, yeah, sure, WECT was paying my rent in my apartment, but really the viewer was who I was working for.
And you were here for a couple of years. At that point in time, was a Monday through Friday sports gig what Todd wanted to do for the rest of his career?
I didn't really want to put any boundaries on what I wanted to do. I wanted to inform in some capacity, whether it's behind a desk or whether it's out in the field. I kind of liked doing both, which ultimately I do now and have been my entire career. But no, I wasn't, I didn't really think about sitting behind a desk and giving Monday through Friday and not going out. I enjoy going out to the stories, meeting the people, meeting the subjects, getting to know them, how dynamic they are. We wouldn't be there with the camera talking to them. So I kind of like that mix, to be honest.
And you were from North Carolina, so had you been to Wilmington before that, or was the job here like your first real long stay in Wilmington?
Well, that was my first real long stay. I think I did go on a fishing trip with my dad when I was young, but I don't remember much about it. But I think that was the really cool aspect of your first full-time job in television, is that you want to be in a cool city. And Wilmington, I was very lucky because I have a lot of friends who started in some cities that aren't half as cool and great and dynamic as Wilmington. But when you're there, you've got, a beach and great people. It's just wonderful. I lived in Wrightsville my last year there, or on Wrightsville. And, it was one of the best years of, my professional life.
Do you miss North Carolina? You grew up in the Reidsville area, grew up on a farm out that way. Do you miss the home state?
A lot of times I miss Orlando because I'm in a Marriott somewhere across the half of my life. But yeah, I do miss my home state. I mean, I grew up in rural North Carolina. My family was in farming. They worked hard and instilled that hard work in me, which combined with a bit of belief and confidence along the way, all beginning with the foundation at WECT, enabled me to have a nice career so far. But yeah, people are fantastic. Obviously, they're wholesome. You've got, besides the beautiful beaches there, you've got the wonderful mountains on the western side of the state. So I do miss North Carolina quite a bit, especially the fact that here in Florida, we might get below freezing one day, and I kind of miss the cold and the temp and the leaves changing, which rarely happens here. So, you get about 2.5 seasons here, not 4.
Yeah, really. Your parents used to drop you off at the local golf course when you were a kid. So you played golf starting at an early age, right?
I did. Again, growing up in rural North Carolina, my great uncle, who was a tobacco farmer, owned a little country golf course that my parents still live on right now, by the way. They've retired, essentially. And I like to tell folks it was a club in the country. It wasn't a country club. It just had basically fairway and a green, and you just kind of learned there, and it was great. Me and my buddies would go and play there. That was kind of our home course. It was cheap. It was fun. And then we would go to other bigger courses, but we would play. I remember one day we played 54 holes and we walked. That's a lot of golf. And, but I love the game because I think it challenges your personality. Besides it being so difficult, I like to call golf the pursuit of perfection that's never attainable. But it also, you're tempted to cheat, do this. You have to know the rules. You don't. It's character of not only yourself, but your playing competitor or your partner. It's just really an upright game that really is dynamic and develops your personality.
What kind of student and young man was Todd Lewis? When did you get the bug that you wanted to broadcast? What did you have an idea that you wanted to do for a living?
Well, I was always intrigued with sports. I was a passionate sports fan growing up as a kid. I was the guy who had posters of North Carolina basketball and Phil Ford, and because I'm old, I'm in my 50s. So if you North Carolina fans remember Phil Ford and Dean Smith, and that was my team. But I was average athlete at best, but I still wanted to maintain a sports connection, and I enjoyed the creativity of journalism and writing and television and that medium. So I guess I kind of focused in my high school years, and I think that was the biggest thing. I knew what I wanted to do, and I wasn't going to leave that lane. I didn't go to college trying to figure it out. I ate a lot of macaroni and cheese because of my salary along the way, but I knew that I wanted to get to a level, and I just, with that belief and that determination, was going to get there.
What do you, when you get a chance to talk to high school or college students now, what do you tell them about somebody who wants to be in, I'm going to use the word media now because even TV news
Right.
is not just on air, it's social media and everything. When they ask you, how do I go about doing this, what do you tell them?
Well, first, like I just mentioned, I think you have to understand what you want to do. You can't go in with just such a broad spectrum. I was just talking to you a few minutes ago where I said I wasn't unsure as to if I'd rather be a reporter or an anchor, but I knew I wanted to be in television working in this medium. You have to understand, try to figure that out first. Secondly, this is something that helped me a lot. Find people that you enjoy, that are insightful, that you enjoy watching on the air, and kind of mimic their characteristics, kind of figure out why they are so good at their job, and then try to see if you can relate to that and developing your own style as well.
Did you, like I did, we're roughly the same age, but do you remember sending out, instead of sending out links to your YouTube page, do you remember sending out the 25 and 30 letters because you saw an ad in the back of Broadcasting Magazine trying to get a job out of college?
Did, and I have a funny story. And it actually happened at WECT. I was probably my second or third year I think it was my second year at WECT, and I was working the weekends, and what we did then, and this, we edited our demo reel, our tape, and we would send it out to prospective stations across the country. And I was up front. We didn't have computers then. We did, but we didn't have word processing or anything. You just typed on a typewriter, and there was an electric typewriter in the lobby of WECT, and there were like 8 one Sunday afternoon that I went in and typed letters to try to get the jobs and send them out. And I left one of those letters in the typewriter.
Oh, no.
And my news director, my boss, found it, and he confronted me. He said, he wasn't so upset that I was looking for a job. He understood that, that you want to elevate yourself in your career rather. But he said, don't do it on our typewriter. Do it on your home typewriter.
Yeah, don't use our letterhead. Don't use our whiteout.
Exactly.
Oh, that's funny. So do you remember the best sports feature that you won the AP award for in '95?
Man, it was something on the beach, wasn't it? I forget. It was, God, I totally forgot about that. Frankly, no, I don't. it was a sports. I think it was something to the effect of like cool sports that people do on the beach, and I had a creative photographer too, I think, and we put together something that was entertaining and I hope informative. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was about it.
At that age, though, getting some kind of those are the things you put at the top of the resume when you're looking for a job back those days.
It's so funny. I do remember this. I got that award um, after I'd already accepted my next job. So I was like finishing out my contract at WECT, and I got that award. But you're right; it's always great to be recognized.
Now you went from here all the way to Washington State, and then ended up coming back. Explain to me the circumstances that one's coast to the other, and then back to RAL, and then down to Orlando.
Well, you know this, John. You're trying to. Our jobs, our performance, our salaries, everything is built upon market sizes. And I wanted to go to a higher market size. And at the time, I'm not sure what is Wilmington now. Do you know
105 something in that neighborhood.
So it was roughly that when I was there in the early to mid 90s, and I went to Spokane, Washington, because it was a bigger market. It was in the 70s. And so, I mean, I was young. I was like, hey, let me go to the West Coast. Let's check that out. I've never been out there. And I'm so glad I did. I learned so many things. I got to see the Northwest, learned how to snowboard, which I love to do right. As a matter of fact, I'm wearing a snowboarding shirt right now. So I love snowboarding. I picked that up there. And so from there, I did get an opportunity to come back home to North Carolina, and I worked at WRAL in Raleigh, and then left there and came to an even larger market here in Orlando, and then a larger market now on national and international television, the Golf Channel, which is based in Orlando.
Now you did NASCAR for a while too, didn't you?
Well, I covered it. I covered NASCAR, and it was here in Orlando when I was working as a sports director and as a morning anchor. Daytona International Speedway is in our market, so that's the biggest race of the year. Twice a year, they have races at Daytona. So I would work there, and in North Carolina we would tour the tracks because when I was working then it was kind of the golden age of NASCAR with Dale Earnhardt and Darrell Waltrip and Rusty Wallace and so on.
My wife, God love her, is cleaning out our garage now because we're trying to sell our house. And she posted a picture of me on her Facebook page, our engagement picture from 1985. And the Ron Burgundy thing started immediately, the gifts. I saw an interview that you did where you said you had 80s hair in the 90s when you worked at in Raleigh and some of those other. Do you look back at some of those pictures or find that video every once in a while and just kind of, ooh, 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 ooh?
Yeah. I was like, what was I thinking? I mean, it's the fashion, the hair. I mean, I look like a member of the Flock of Seagulls band when I was working at WRAL. It was, but that's what you do. I just look totally different, obviously now, but all of that is just, that's just part of culture and how we were, and trying to be hip and fashionable at the time. I think it's. That, John, you should know more than me.
Yeah. Well, I got so many Ron Burgundy gifts on my page after Sheila posted that. It's not even funny.
Well, you're a really big deal.
Well, yeah, I wrote on Facebook, "Stay classy," Facebook, and of course that just took off too. Did you ever get to the point, or when did you get to the point of that you told mom and dad, I really think I've arrived and found what I want to do the rest of my life? Because as a son, you get to that point where you're always trying to impress dad and do and everything like that. When was the time that you said, hey, Dad, look at me. I think I've really kind of made it in this industry?
I never really did that, to be honest. I will say that my parents have been incredibly supportive of my career choices, and my mom thinks it's such this, the job, we're here again to service our viewers. My mom thinks it's such a big deal to be on TV. I mean, even today, I've been doing this since 1991, and even last night she called me. She's like, I saw you host Golf Central last night. God, you're so da 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 da. It's so cute. But they've been great. But yeah, I think it's just that I don't know. I guess it's just something unsaid that that this is something I wanted to do, and they've always been supportive.
Yeah, it really gets to that point though when you think you've and you got to continue to think that you're learning and getting better all the time. Now, you were in Orlando and you got on with the Golf Channel, and something that I read, you said you played golf, but it wasn't the easiest transition to covering the game.
No, it wasn't. I was the sports director at the CBS affiliate here in Orlando, and at the time when I was working, there were two PGA Tour events here in this market, and so you covered it. It was in the height of the Tiger Woods era. So I thought I played golf. I thought I knew golf, and I realized immediately that when I walked into the Golf Channel and started working, that I had a high school diploma when it came to the game, and everyone there had a PhD. I didn't. They have a ladies European tour. I didn't know that, and stuff like that. And so it's amazing how much I have learned about players, scoring, clubs, you name it. That it's just crazy. I'm totally enveloped in the game, and I love it. It's fun.
How long do you think it took you to develop the rapport and the trust with the players on the tour? I mean, you start to see them week after week after week. When did you finally think, or was there an episode or a time or a story that you think, okay, they've really started to accept me here?
Well, there's always, look, I have friends that are players out on the PGA Tour, but I don't necessarily, there's a line that I don't feel like you want to cross, like to be incredibly close to them, but definitely be friendly and become friends with them. I tell you, I hear this a lot. Like, how do you establish relationships? You establish it by being good at your job, because people are watching, including the subjects that you're talking about. I mean, the players watch and their wives watch more because you're talking about their guy. So if you do a solid job with that, first you gain their immediate respect. And then after that, it's being insightful. It's being knowledgeable of what's going on around the situation that you're covering. And just frankly, just being polite and being nice and professional. I think that those are the basics that helps you establish a trustworthy relationship with your subjects.
And you've been there now for 10 years. Have you seen the social media aspect of the entire golf world? You were there through the Tiger high times and then to his tough times. Have you seen social media really kind of take over to the point where you have to be careful what you say or tweet or post or anything like that?
Yeah, I think, yes, absolutely. From a player's perspective, I mean, they build their brand. A lot of them do, especially the younger players, via social media. Ricky Fowler is a superstar probably because of social media. But yeah, from our perspective, I'm predominantly on Twitter, and I use it as a news device to give out information. So, occasionally I'll give out an opinion, and every time I hit send, I always think, should I have done that? But yeah, it's definitely heightened awareness, and is actually, a lot of people now get their news via social media more than they do the Golf Channel.
Yeah. Do you have a time that you can recollect that you sit back after a first interview with a Palmer or a Nicklaus that you just sat back and say, wow, I'm covering the people who I love to play this sport and really classy people? Was there that first time where you sat back and said, man, this is cool?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I don't know about the first time, but I do remember the coolest moment in regards to saying this is unbelievable is that, so I have a 2-year-old now, and she was born at Winnie Palmer Hospital here in Orlando. And that name, Palmer, should be familiar. That's Arnold Palmer's wife, who unfortunately died of cancer. They named this hospital Winnie Palmer Hospital for Children and Babies, and that's where my daughter Addison was born. And she was roughly 2 or 3 months old, and the Arnold Palmer Invitational was happening here at Bay Hill. And I, unannounced, showed up while covering the tournament with my wife and my daughter in Mr. Palmer's office. And I saw his receptionist, his name was Mr. Palmer, in. She said, let me check. She went into his office and checked. And he said, yeah, come on in. And so I went in with my wife and daughter. And as soon as I walked in, Mr. Palmer, who I've known for a decade, he could care less about me. He wanted to hold my daughter. And so I put her rather in his arms, and he was just gushing all over her. And that was like really, really cool, given the fact that Addison was born at Winnie Palmer Hospital. And more importantly, we took some pictures in a video. Mr. Palmer died like 6 months later.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I actually had that down here, and I saw the picture, actually. And I couldn't imagine having one of my kids being held by Arnold Palmer when I'm working for the Golf Channel.
Yeah, I mean, it was surreal. I mean, it was beautiful. And it's funny, Mr. Palmer passed away, and I was there. I was there doing the broadcast, and it was during the week of the Ryder Cup. So it's a huge week, and I was on the ground, and we were all going through stories on the air about Mr. Palmer, and I told that story, and it was really hard to get through that story because it was so emotional, so touching. What Mr. Palmer not only done for the game, but also what he did for me and my family, and what he's done for so many other families, not only with that hospital that I mentioned, but also the Arnold Palmer Children's Hospital, which has done so much to, actually save babies and save a lot of families from heartache. And it's been a real impact in the Orlando community and all over the world of what that hospital has done.
What does being a dad, and how does being a dad, and obviously you were married to Melanie for some years before Addison was born, but what did becoming a dad mean to you? How did it change? Obviously, when you're single, you travel, you really don't have to worry about it, but all of a sudden when you got a 2-year-old at home and you want to get home and be with the family, how did that change your perspective on everything?
Well, because my wife is probably 10 feet from me. So it definitely shifted some things. It's still my job, but it's harder being on the road. I've missed my daughter's first words. I missed her first steps. So those things, you just have to manage those emotions, unfortunately, and understand that you're providing for your family. But Golf Channel has worked with me at least this year specifically, as my daughter gets older and is growing and becoming more relatable, to kind of limit my travel some. So I've cut a few events off my schedule, so I'm a little more home now.
What did it mean covering the Olympics in 2016?
It was phenomenal. I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I've never been to an Olympics, much less to an Olympics that had golf in it for the first time in well over 100 years. And I show up, and I tell you, our hotel was right beside the Olympic Village. And you look at this, these high rises of where all these great athletes are staying, and you see their flags from their country over their balcony, and you get that spirit of not only, well, sure, competitiveness, but also togetherness. And it really is a unifying event. If you ever have a chance to go to the Olympics, you do feel that special, beautiful energy, yes, of human competition, but also people you kind of realize that the world isn't so big, I guess, that there is joy in sports. And sometimes it felt like a very borderless event, what I'm trying to say. Although they were representing the country, I saw many athletes from all over the world, from different countries, coming together. So it was really kind of cool.
What does a typical day for Todd Lewis? You have certain days off. I know you travel, and the tournaments are obviously on the weekends, but what is a work week or a work day like on your schedule?
Well, it depends. The last 3 days I've been in studio, so those days are just like your days. You would come in, you meet. We have production meetings, and we put on an hour-long show covering golf. When I'm on the road, it's different. First, let's just pick an event. Let's say the Championship in Charlotte, which I've covered many years. So Monday, I will travel to Charlotte. That's a specific travel day. Then I show up at the golf course Tuesday around 9 o'clock. And then you're essentially covering all the stories and discovering some of the stories that are happening for that week surrounding the world's greatest players. You do the same thing Tuesday, and then Wednesday the same thing, and then Thursday competition starts. And at that point, you're different. Tuesday and Wednesday, you're trying to uncover stories or cover stories. Thursday through Sunday, you're basically just reacting to what's happening with the competition. But they're long, 10, 11-hour days, and the tournament's over on Monday. You get on a plane and you either fly to the next tournament or you fly home.
Yeah, it has to be taxing on you, though. I know you are very health conscious, and I know you work out and you keep yourself healthy. And I imagine you really, if you don't take care of yourself, that could really wear you down.
Yeah, I was really taking care of myself. Well, a couple years ago, but I kind of slowed up a bit. But yeah, you do try to. I think more than anything, it's not the physical aspect; it's the mental aspect. It's like, you have to have a great attitude. You have to have great coworkers, which I'm lucky to have. You have to have a great support system. And my wife, who does a phenomenal job, she has a career as well, and she's managing our daughter and her job while I'm gone. So I appreciate her support tremendously. So you just have to have the mental approach, and again, understand that you're again working for the viewer, and this is your path you've chosen. I'm still passionate about it, so I love it.
Is Melanie the solidifying element in your life the way Sheila is in mine?
Yeah, she's the glue. There's no doubt. I mean, it would be hard without her. And yeah, she does a tremendous job. She's an awesome mom. She supports me when I need it. Hopefully, I've supported her, and so yeah, it's a good little team.
And I don't want to keep you too much longer here, but I did want to ask you about a piece of video that I saw. I didn't know that you went to UNCG, you graduated Reesville, you worked in Wilmington. I didn't know that you toured with Guns N' Roses for a while, because I saw the Ernie Els video at the Els for Autism event with you singing Sweet Child of Mine. Where did that come from?
Let's get our facts correct here. Let's not have any alternative facts or any fake news. I did not tour with Guns N' Roses. There was I was in some rock and roll bands. It's not very limited. Toyed around with some musical groups in college, and I am a frustrated rocker, I guess. And occasionally, that event was in Las Vegas, and my friend who was with me is also in the television and production industry. He's also a musician, and he went up to the band without me knowing and said, "Hey, you should bring Todd Lewis to come up and sing." And next thing I know, they asked me to come up, and so I'm singing with the band. It was cool. We sang "Sweet Child of Mine" and some Journey tunes. The coolest moment was the following. This is a story. Same event, but the Els people hired the musical group Train, who's won Grammys. They're a very great, popular group. And the organizers told Train that I was a singer, and so they wanted to meet me, and so they brought me backstage. Got to meet the band. Pat Monahan is the lead singer. He's from San Francisco. He actually inducted Journey into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Wow.
And said, "Hey, do you know Journey?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding?" And so we orchestrated a sing-off where he would sing the first verse and I would sing the second verse, and we kept going back and forth, and then we came together and sang the chorus together. So I got to actually sing with Train, so that was actually a really cool moment.
Stuff like that, though, the Els for Autism event, how many of those do you do? Because I've got a nephew who is autistic, and to see you at that event, not only, having fun, obviously, on stage, but supporting events like that, I know you're heavily involved with some of those kind of events, too.
Yeah, I think, yes, players, some have become my friends, including Ernie, Jordan Spieth, Zach Johnson. They all have foundations. So a couple others that I volunteered my time. They've asked me to and I've said, absolutely. If my schedule works out, then I will go out and support them, because, they want to help those in need, and if they ask me, I feel like it's a responsibility. I want to. It's not a responsibility. I want to go out and help them and to help others. So yeah, I enjoy doing those things.
I think this question.
Year.
Yeah, I think I asked you this question when you were in town for the Wells Fargo here last year. What doesn't a golf fan know about a professional golfer? It seems to me like these are just normal guys. Their job is to play golf, but you're with them many, many weeks a year. What don't fans know about these guys who are playing the game for a living?
That they're tougher than you think. Because if you look at golf, you fail many, many more times than you succeed. And so you have to understand that. And plus, they have to deal. The biggest thing that there is their enemy is expectations, and that's generally internal expectations. Like, because they put pressure on themselves, and they have to manage that because you don't have a teammate. It's just you and a ball, and then that's it. And
it was really fun catching up with you during the Wells Fargo here in Wilmington last year. I think Wilmington did a great job hosting that event last year. What did you think?
I think they did an awesome job. The golf course was tremendous. Players loved it. The fan turnout was tremendous as well.
Todd, take care. We always follow you on the Golf Channel, and we hope to see you back in Wilmington again real soon.
You've been a joy. I've known you for a long time. You've been a great class act, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you to Todd Lewis for sparing some time for this week's podcast interview. You can follow him on the Golf Channel and, of course, on the Golf Channel website, which is golfchannel.com. He's also very active on social media, especially on Twitter, where he's Todd Lewis GC. He is Todd T. Lewis on Instagram and Todd Lewis on Facebook. Next week, another network sports guy who got his start right here in Wilmington. Former UNCW play-by-play guy Sam Gore will join us. He now travels across the country and around the world covering events for ESPN.
I've always believed that God has opened doors for me that I could never open myself. I get kind of emotional because I remember last week we were in a production meeting at Wimbledon. And I'm sitting in this production meeting, and I'm looking around the room at Chris Fowler, who everyone knows in college football, John McEnroe, Chris Evert, Darren Cahill, Brad Gilbert, Pam Shriver, Mary Jo Fernandez, I think I mentioned Patrick McEnroe, all of Cliff Drysdale, all of these legends in the sport and in the industry, Chris McKendry, and I'm like, I cannot believe I'm here.
That's Sam Gore next week right here on our podcast. We welcome any and all suggestions and comments about this episode and any others that you've listened to. The best way to get in touch with me is by email, jevans@wect.com, but I'm on social media too, on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So you can send those messages on those sites and let me know what you think. And of course, thank you for all the ratings and reviews you've left me. That's really helped us bring in some new listeners. I'm John Evans. Thanks so much for joining us for this week's episode of One on One.